Hi there and welcome to Anatomy Hack. In this video I'll show you how to draw the cubital fossa and label its boundaries and its contents. We'll also label some other surrounding structures, so if you find this video helpful, please hit the like button or subscribe to the channel so you don't miss another one of our anatomy hacks. The cubital fossa is a triangle-shaped transitional region of the elbow, and it's the site where the main neurovascular structures transition from the arm into the forearm. It has three borders. The medial border is made by pronator teres, the lateral border is made by brachioradialis, and the superior border is made by a line drawn between the medial and lateral epicondyles of the humerus. Okay, so let's draw the cubital fossa. First we start off by drawing a triangle. This gives us our three borders that we can then label. So the first, or the base of the triangle here, is formed by a line between the medial and the lateral epicondyles of the humerus. So we call this the epicondylar line. And it's the most superior point of the cubital fossa. Next, let's draw in what side's going to be lateral and which side is going to be medial. There we go. So the medial border is made up by the lateral edge of the pronator teres muscle. I'm just going to write that as pronator teres there, PT. The lateral border is formed by the medial edge of the brachioradialis muscle. Okay, now we're not going to draw in the roof and the floor because it kind of gets a bit messy, so I'm going to write that on the side. So the floor is made up by the brachialis muscle. That's another elbow flexor in the anterior compartment of the arm, whereas the roof is made up by the bicipital aponeurosis, as well as skin and fascia. So the biceps brachii muscle has a tendinous insertion as well as a aponeurotic insertion. So the aponeurosis makes up the roof, whereas the tendon will in fact be one of the contents within the triangle. Okay, so now when we label the contents, we move from medial to lateral, and we can follow this order of letters: M, B, B, R. Now that stands for the median nerve, the brachial artery, the biceps tendon, and the radial nerve. So let's draw those in. The median nerve is our M. Let's draw in the brachial artery. Brachial artery, and it gives off a branch. Like that. Now let's draw in the biceps tendon. Draw some lines so that it looks tendinous. And another nerve, the radial nerve, most laterally there. Okay, so we had two nerves. Most medial nerve was the median, and most laterally was the radial nerve. We had one artery, but it gave two branches. Okay, so we had one, this is the brachial artery. The branch that branches off to the medial side is the ulnar artery, and the branch that continues down into the forearm is the radial artery. Then in grey, we had our biceps tendon, and the more lateral nerve, which we labelled before, was the radial nerve. Okay, so just a little bit more on the contents of the cubital fossa. We mentioned the median nerve, which is the most medial nerve of the fossa, and it arises from the lateral and medial chords of the brachial plexus. And it has the spinal nerve roots of C5 to T1. Now the median nerve gives many muscular branches as it exits the cubital fossa and enters the forearm. So it continues down and gives many muscular branches. Now the median nerve enters the forearm through the two heads of the pronator teres muscle. Sometimes it can pass through the humeral head, which leads to the pronator teres syndrome, which kind of gives symptoms that appear like carpal tunnel syndrome. Or it can pass into the forearm by running posterior to both heads. So there's a fair bit of variation with where the median nerve runs, although this is the most common location. Now the brachial artery, about 3/4 down into the fossa, it gives off the ulnar artery, which we labelled as number 2 here, the ulnar artery. So the brachial artery, after giving the ulnar artery branch, continues as the radial artery. There's a bit of variation here too, and personally I've seen a few cases where both the radial and the ulnar arteries have branched directly off the axillary artery right up in the shoulder. So there's lots of different ways in which the radial and the ulnar artery can branch off the brachial artery, but in this diagram we've just drawn the most common, which is probably the one that you'll need to learn for your anatomy exam. The third structure, moving from medial to lateral, is the biceps tendon. Now, there's not much variation with where this inserts other than how big it is, but we do know that it inserts into the radial tuberosity. And then there's the radial nerve, the most lateral structure, and it has the same nerve roots as the median nerve, which is convenient, so C5 to T1. However, it arises from the posterior cord of the brachial plexus. Now once the radial nerve has passed the brachioradialis medial border, just here, so it branches into the posterior interosseous branch, and into the superficial radial branch. The posterior interosseous branch continues into the forearm after it winds around the neck of the radius, and it goes to supply the posterior compartment of the forearm Now the posterior interosseous branch actually winds around the neck of the radius and then into the posterior compartment of the forearm, where it will go to supply most of the extensor muscles, but not all, except for triceps brachii, anconeus, brachioradialis, and extensor carpi radialis longus. They all receive direct branches from the radial nerve itself and not from the posterior interosseous nerve. The superficial radial nerve, number 4, travels deep to the brachioradialis and then emerges between the tendons of brachioradialis and extensor carpi radialis longus, almost halfway down the forearm. It provides cutaneous sensation to the lateral half of the hand, the first 3 digits, except for their tips, which is done by the median nerve. And if you can identify extensor pollicis longus on yourself at the anatomical snuff box in your hand, then you could palpate the superficial radial nerve because it crosses over that tendon in the hand. So this is the typical drawing of the cubital fossa, maybe with a little bit more detail in there, but otherwise this is what you'll need to know for your anatomy exam if you're studying undergrad or postgrad. But there are actually some more important structures nearby, but not within the cubital fossa, and they are the ulnar nerve on the medial side, and it passes posterior to the medial epicondyle and travels to supply the flexor carpi ulnaris, the medial half of flexor digitorum profundus, and they're the muscle bellies that control the fourth and the fifth digits. The deep ulnar branch innervates the hypothena eminence and the fourth and third lumbricals, as well as the dorsal and palmar interossei, adductor pollicis, and the deep head of flexor pollicis brevis. It also does palmaris brevis. Another nerve that we could draw in is a smaller nerve, and it's called the lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm. Now its position is roughly here. And the lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm emerges in between the biceps brachii muscle and the brachialis muscle. Lastly, we can draw in some venous structures, and probably one of the more well-known things about the cubital fossa is that it's a common site for venipuncture or to get a blood sample, and this is commonly done from one of three veins. The first, and we'll start medial, the first is the basilic vein. The second is the cephalic vein, and that is on far lateral side. And the third, and probably most common, is the vein that joins the basilic to the cephalic, and that is called the median cubital vein. So those three veins help to drain the blood from the fingers, the hand, the forearm, and the elbow back up towards the axilla so that it can re-enter the bloodstream. So that's it, guys, a relatively quick video today. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, feel free to give this video a like and subscribe to the page so that you don't miss another one of our anatomy hacks. If you have missed some in the past, we've done videos on the carpal tunnel as well as the three major transitional regions of the lower limb. So make sure you go back and have a look at those videos. That's it for today, guys. We'll see you in the next video.